So now let's talk about the B part of second question, that is differentiate between homozygous and heterozygous. So now we have to differentiate between these two terms, that is homozygous and heterozygous. So first, if we talk about homozygous, then homozygous is a pure, it is pure for a trait and breeds true. If we are talking about the homozygous one, then this is a pure and it breeds true. That means it produces the individuals with similar genotype. It produces the individuals with similar genotype which are homozygous in condition. That means capital T or small t, for example. And whereas if we talk about the heterozygous one, then this is seldom pure and produces the offsprings with different genotypes. Heterozygous are seldom true and produces the offsprings with different genotypes such as capital T, small t, capital T, small t on the selfing of a heterozygous pair of alleles, that is capital T, small t. If we talk about the homozygous again, then a pair of allele contains similar allele, a pair of gene, a pair of allele. We know that alleles are always present in pair. So these are two are the similar. These two are similar in homozygous condition, whether it is dominant, whether it is recessive. It can be dominant, it can be recessive, but they're always similar. Both the alleles in case of homozygous condition are similar for a trait, whereas in the heterozygous condition, both the alleles for a trait are dissimilar. That means capital T, small t. It can never be capital T, it can never be small t, whereas this condition applies for homozygous one. That means if alleles of a trait are present in the homozygous condition, it would be small t, capital T, but can never be capital T, small t. Now if we talk about the another thing about homozygous condition or homozygous pair of trait, then they can produce only one type of gamete. These homozygous pair can only produce one type of gamete, whereas the heterozygous can produce two types of gametes. Alright, they can produce two types of gametes. Now if we talk about these, then we will going to write the answer. In the left column, we are going to write homozygous, Here we are going to talk about heterozygous. Now if we talk about the difference between these two, the first basic difference is it is true, it is pure. First of all, it is pure and breeds true, What does that mean? That is, it produces the offsprings, with homozygous condition, which are similar to it, homozygous condition. Whereas if we talk about the heterozygous one, then they are seldom pure and produces the offsprings with different genotype, That means capital T, small t, capital T, small t on the selfing of a heterozygous pair such as capital T small t. Whereas if it is producing any offspring, it is making any individual, then this individual will be present in a homozygous condition, and we know that homozygous condition can be capital T, small t. It can never be capital T, small t. Whereas if we talk about the heterozygous one, then heterozygous one is capital T, small t always. It can never be capital T, small t. It was always present with two different alleles. Alright, and in this condition, both the alleles are similar. So the second basic difference is both alleles of a trait are similar. Both the alleles for a trait are similar, and in case of heterozygous condition, both alleles are dissimilar. As we can see that both the alleles, this is the allele for height of a plant, and both the alleles of a trait are actually present in the dissimilar condition. The third basic difference between these two is it can produce only one type of gamete always. At the time of gametic formation, it can only produces one type of gamete, whereas this heterozygous condition can produces two types of alleles, two types of gametes. Now, it does not show, the last but not least, it does not show extra vigor, whereas this one can show extra vigor, means hybrid vigor, which is known as hybrid vigor. That means it can produce hybrids, alright, and it cannot produce hybrids. So this is the basic difference between homozygous and heterozygous pairs of a trait. Homozygous are always present in the similar condition. Also, there is one more difference between this, than that the homozygous condition can either have dominant alleles or can have recessive alleles. It can have either dominant alleles and it can have recessive alleles, whereas in the heterozygous condition it contains both the alleles, both the type of alleles, that is dominant and recessive. Heterozygous condition or heterozygous pair of allele can have both the type of alleles, that is dominant and recessive, whereas homozygous one can either have only dominant alleles or recessive alleles at a time, because it is present in a similar condition and the alleles of a trait in the heterozygous condition are dissimilar. So these are the basic differences between homozygous and heterozygous conditions.